Mis-
Suddenly, is that
Yeah,
suddenly?
suddenly.
Suddenly, yeah.
I did nothing differently. I
Okay.
just kept testing the settings, and the settings were fine, just like
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yes.
Hey,
Then let's start.
yes, Kaishiba, woman Kaishiba. All right. So today we're going to talk more, as we are throughout this EAC, about aspects.
今天我们要开始更多的谈一下相位。
However, we're going to deal with something that I think is always an issue, which is how to prioritize the aspects.
那么不过呢，我们要去来解决一下这个问题。那么这个问题就是如何来看相位的优先顺序。
Our Noder girl, she always asks good questions, and she's asking which aspects are the most important. She says she knows that the closer the aspect is, the more emphasis it has, but she gets confused about which aspects to talk about. Since there's so many aspects in a chart, she doesn't even know where to start. She wants to know, is there a system or method for prioritizing the aspects so you know which aspects to spend more time talking about?
那我们的弱道女孩呢，常常不确定哪个相位是最重要的。她说：“我知道越紧密的相位被强调的越多，但是我很困惑，不知道该谈论哪些相位。一张星图中有那么多相位，有时候我不知道从哪儿开始。有没有什么关于相位优先级排序的体系或者方法，让我能知道哪些相位需要花更多的时间来讨论？”
Well, all of you remember the basic model or analogy for a chart, which is like a committee sitting around a table.
大家都知道，就是一个星图的它最基本的这个模型，就是它像在一张桌边坐定的一个委员会一样。
In many aspects show the relationship of the people sitting around the table.
那么实际上很多的这样的相位，就向我们展示了这些坐在桌边的这一个委员会成员他们之间的关系。
Can show people are together. They are combining their energy to influence what happens.
啊，又没声音了。Hello?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay. Could you say it again?
Conjunction shows people at the table whose combined energy influences the committee.
哦，一个合相就反映了这两个人他们坐在一起，他们的能量合在了一起，一起来影响这个委员会。
Whereas the trines between the planets will show areas of ease or resolution, and the sextiles opportunities that are created by one member and another.
那么三合相说明这是一个比较容易的解决的问题，而六分相位呢，说明这是一个机会，这是两个委员之间能够有这样一个机会去解决这样一个问题。
But think about this. What does a committee spend more time dealing with?
但是你要这样想，这个委员会它把最多的时间会花在什么上面呢？
Committee spends much more time dealing with the conflicts and pressures.
那么这个委员会毫无疑问会把更多的时间精力花在矛盾还有压力上。
So one of the things to remember before we get to our list of priorities is that you will spend more time talking with people about the pressures and conflicts in their life.
那么，所以说你要记得，你会花更多的时间去跟别人谈他们生命中的矛盾和压力。
You will spend less time talking about trines and sextiles and more time probably talking about squares and oppositions.
那么，对于三合相位和六分相位，你们花的时间会比较少一些，你会把更多的时间花在四分和对分相上。
However, there is also a list of priorities when it comes to aspects, and here it is.
不过呢，对于相位优先级顺序来说，确实有一个列表。那么以下就是这个列表。
Okay. Number 1, and this is so important, the angles
第一点
have the greatest priority in a chart.
第一点，这非常非常的重要，就是四轴。四轴在一个星图上，它们的优先级最高。
And by angles, you know what I mean. I mean the ascendant and descendant, and the MC and the IC.
那么我说这个四轴，你们是知道我的意思，它就上升、下降、中天和下中天。
Now, it's true that you have to have a reasonably accurate birth time to be sure that these aspects to the angles are correct.
没错，你确实需要有一个就是说它的出生时间是要准确，这样我们才能确保这些四轴的相位是四轴的点是准确的。
In fact, one of the ways you can do a partial rectification of a chart when the birth time is a little uncertain is by looking at the aspects to the angles.
实际上，你可以通过看这个和轴点所成的相位来做一个一点生时校正的工作，部分生时校正的工作。
And this can kind of help you. For example, if someone was born with Pluto within, say, 5 degrees of the ascendant, you should be able to see Pluto in their face, in their personality.
比如说，一个人他的冥王星落在上升点的5度之内，那么你就应该在他的脸上，在他们的人格层面上看到这个冥王星。
There's going to be an intensity that kind of feels and looks a little bit like Scorpio.
那么它那上面呢，就有一种比较激烈的这样的感觉，你会感觉到有一点点天蝎座的感觉。
And therefore, their attempt to control whatever they're involved with shows more in their outer behavior. They have a more controlling personality.
所以说，在他们的外在行为上面呢，他就会有一些更多的去控制的那样的人格特质。
So these aspects to angles, number 1 priority in the chart.
所以说，对于四轴的相位是在星图上面是排在最重要的优先级上的。
Next on the list are aspects to the sun and moon.
那么下一个级别优先级是对太阳和月亮的相位。
Third on the list are aspects to the personal planets, including the lunar nodes.
那么第三级别呢是其他的这些个人行星，金星、水星、火星，还有月亮焦点。
Next on the list are, of course, aspects involving Jupiter and Saturn, and then last, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
那么第四个呢是木星和土星的相位，第五个是天王星、海王星和冥王星的相位。
Felicia, I see we have a question from
Yes.
Maja.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. She asks, if we say the angles are most important, even it's not a tight aspect, it's still important.
Yes, it is important. What do you mean by tight aspect, though? Because we're going to be talking about that.
Oh, it means that it's not so, wide all.
It is in a wide orb, you mean?
Yes, it is in a wide orb.
Okay. And the birth time is certain?
The birth time is certain.
Excuse me. Notice this, what I wrote in the material here. From major aspects to angles, an orb of 5 degrees works best. Do you see that?
那在这里面我也写到了，对四轴来说，主要相位使用5度的容许度效果最佳。
Okay. If you have something that is 5 degrees or less, it's going to show up very strongly, even if it's at 5 degrees. It'll still influence at 6 or 7, but less so.
那么如果是这个和四轴的容许度在5度之内呢，它会非常明显的表现出来。那么它是在6度、7度的时候呢，也会很有影响力，不过就没有像5度以内的那样的影响力。
Now, remember, interpretation, which you're learning about aspects here, so you're learning about the 4th stage of interpretation.
你们现在在学相位，所以说呢，你们也会学到关于相位解读的4个阶段。
But let's say, for example, that let's say that the ascendant is square Neptune.
那比如说上升点4分海王星。
And let's say that it's that the ascendant is, let's say it's a 5 degree orb. We could say the ascendant is 10 degrees of, let's say Gemini. No, let's say Virgo. And let's say Neptune is at 15 degrees of Sagittarius.
比如说
Okay?
上升点是处女座10度，而海王星是射手座15度。
There is still going to be sensitivity, Neptune, that shows in the personality that is not very Virgo.
那么就在这个人的个性上面，你可以看到这个海王星的特征，那个就是使这个人不是那么像上升处女座的这个特征。
However, suppose the same person was born with the Sun conjunct Mars, and let's say the Sun and Mars are within less than a degree. So let's say the Sun and Mars are both at 22 degrees of Aries, 白羊座，而是白羊座。
那同样的这个人呢，他的太阳和火星是紧密合相在白羊座22度。
Okay. How is that going to be experienced? You've got someone with Virgo rising, the ascendant square Neptune, but they've also got a Sun-Mars conjunction in Aries.
那么这个人他有上升处女座4分射手座的海王星，但是同时呢，他又有太阳和火星合相在白羊座。那么你会你对他的经历会是什么样的呢？你对他的体会？
Now this Sun-Mars, for those of you who are already learning about how to see things in a chart, this Sun-Mars conjunction would be in the 8th house.
那么如果是你们已经见过一个星图的话呢，你就知道这个太火的合相是在第8宫。
But the reason I'm pointing this out is I want you to think about how to combine this.
那我之所以把它指出来，是我想你们去想一想，如何把它们2个联合在一起。
Virgo is a very focused sign.
处女座是一个很聚精会神的星座，很聚焦的星座。
海王星 Neptune not very focused.
而海王星不是那个非常聚焦的行星。
So what does it say? It says that this person experiences more pressure with focus. They can focus, and then they become a little unfocused.
那这是什么意思呢？就意味着这个人呢，他在是不是能专注这一点上是有压力的。他可能一会儿他是有些专注，然后呢，另外一段时间他就无法专注。
They may have an imagination.
他们会去想象。
Or be more sensitive than is usual for Virgo rising. I've got to get something from my throat here.
或者是他们就变得更敏感一些，而这对于一个上升处女座的人来说呢，这是不寻常的。
I always bring 2 boxes of these from China. This helps me get through my webinar.
大卫是从中国带去了中国的特产。
Mm-hmm. All right. So you've got this person who looks a little bit like Virgo rising. They've got a little bit of nervous energy, a little bit. They look focused, but there's also something about them where they can space out a little bit.
那么这个人呢，他看上去有点像处女座的，他还是有一点处女座的那个神经质的紧张，但是呢，他身上还有一个，就是说他有恍惚的那一点，就看上去有点恍惚。
This is a Virgo rising person who maybe has learned to listen to their intuition.
那么这是一个处女座的人，他可能需要去学习，去倾听他们的直觉。
They can be both, in the positive sense, they could be both logical and intuitive.
那么在正向的表达上，他们可以既有逻辑性，又非常的有灵感。
But if they are in the grocery store and there's music playing and they have their grocery list in front of them, the sound of the music can distract them a little bit.
但是比如说他如果杂货店，他们手里拿着一个购物清单，但是那个店里面音乐响起，他们就会就会有一点点迷失了。听到这个音乐，他们就会有一点点迷失了。
Right. You know, they're looking at the list, trying to stay focused on what they came into the store to buy. The music's playing, and part of them starts to dance as they're pushing their cart.
所以说呢，他们虽然还看着清单，但是这个音乐响起来了，然后呢，他们身体的一部分，他们心里的一部分其实就想跳舞了。但是他还是在推着那个购物车。
What are we going to know about this person?
但是我们会了解到这个人身上的什么呢？
Suppose the same person who we're describing in the grocery store, now they are in the checkout line, they're at the cash register.
那假如说这个人呢，他现在在那个结账的地方。
And they notice that the clerk in the store has made a mistake and has charged them too much for something they have bought.
他们注意到呢，这个结账的这个结账的这个人呢，多收了他们钱，多收了他们很多钱，收银员多收了他们很多钱。
Well, even though on the surface this person probably appears kind of mild-mannered, more, you know, a personality that is more, you know, not very, more understated is the key word for Virgo, understated personality.
虽然看上去这个人表面上是一个好像是挺低调的一个人，这个低调是这个处女座的一个关键词。
However, we know they have a Sun-Mars conjunction in Aries in the 8th house.
但是我们知道他们有太火合相在第8宫白羊座。
So they might appear very quiet with their shopping cart, standing in line. The music's playing. But they're watching as the clerk is charging them for their groceries.
所以说他们看上去好像很安静的就在队伍中间，然后听着音乐。但是呢，他也再去看这个，一看见这个收银员多收了他们钱。
Are they going to be patient when they see the clerk has made a mistake?
当他们发现这个收银员犯了个错误，他们会很耐心吗？
No.
当然不会。
Definitely not. A person with the Sun and Mars in Aries, or even just Mars in Aries in the 8th house, is going to jump all over that clerk.
那么，一个有着太火合相在白羊座的人，哪怕他仅有火星在白羊座的话呢，他会一下子就跳到这个收银员，就跳出来。
They're going to point at him. You made a mistake. Fix this right now.
他们会指着那个收银员说：“你出错了，现在就给我改了。”
Okay, so when you are talking with someone about their chart, all of these things we just described are true.
所以说，当你跟这个人谈论他的星图的时候，我们刚才所说的这一切都是真的，都是真实的。
Normally, this is a mild-mannered individual on the surface.
那么一般来说呢，这个是看上去表面很温和的这样一个人。
They seem
Hello?
logical. I said they logical, practical, and a little.
他们看上去既合逻辑，又很踏实、很现实，而且还有一点点敏感。
Beneath, we see that there's a hot comes resources, getting with other people, and probably of and sexuality.
Can you repeat it again?
Oh, sure.
We cannot hear
What
you
happened?
now. We lost you just now.
Wow. Well, the internet's really messed up today. I haven't changed anything. All right, I'm going to try to say this one more time, okay? The point I'm making here is very simple. When you are interpreting a chart, and you're trying to work with this list of priorities, you need to think of how these aspects operate in real life.
我所讲的其实很简单。当你看一个星图的时候，当你看到这些不同的相位的时候，你需要从真实的生活这个角度想，这样的相位是怎样表达的。
I like to think about different examples of how people might behave based on their chart.
我喜欢去想象，根据这个星图看上去这个人的行为方式会是怎么样的。
Somebody with the Sun and Mars and Aries in the 8th house wants immediate results when it comes to all 8th house matters.
Oh, what manners?
8th house. If we're saying that this is in the
OK. 对于这样一个太阳和火星合相在白羊座的人，在八宫所有所指的这个事情上面，他们都需要得到立即的答案，立即的回应。
Yeah, we're saying this is 8th house. Okay. All right. So here's my point. On the surface, and can you hear me, Felicia?
Yes, yes.
Okay. on the surface, this person might appear very mild-mannered. Let's say that this is the chart of a man. We'll use example of male or female, okay? Let's say this is the chart of a man, and he's got Virgo rising, and he's out on a date with someone that he's just started dating. Maybe they've had 2 or 3 dates, maybe, okay?
那么我们假设这是个男人，他开始跟一个女人约会，那么他刚开始和这个女性呢只约会了2、3次。
To his date, to his girlfriend, his new girlfriend, he seems like a kind of mild-mannered guy. He seems logical, practical, kind of sensitive in some ways. He likes music.
那么对他的这个新的女朋友来说，看上去他像一个很温和的男人，他很有逻辑性，而且很实在。然后呢，他有点喜欢音乐等等。
However, she has noticed that that he has a little bit of what we call an edge.
但是呢，他也注意到呢，这个男人也有一点点锋芒。
She noticed that on one date, he got a little angry with the taxi cab driver.
他注意到有一次他们约会的时候呢，他对这个出租汽车司机有一点生气。
Well, let's say they're on their 4th date now.
那我们说他们现在第4次约会了。
And they begin to kiss each other.
他们开始亲吻。
Okay. Well, because he's got the Sun conjunct Mars in the 8th house, he gets aroused very fast.
但是呢，因为这个男性有太火合相在8宫白羊座，这个男人就是亲吻的时候，他一下他就兴奋起来了。
And he might be too aggressive for his date, so he comes on too strong.
就是说，对他的这个约会的对象来说呢，好像这个男人就是现在是表现的太有点进攻性了。
She's telling him, slow down, slow down.
那么这个女性会告诉这个男性，咱们慢点来。
Right. But he's a Sun-Mars conjunction in Aries. It's hard for him to slow down. So this is an issue.
但是呢，这个男性有太火合相在白羊座，所以说他很难真的慢下来，这就变成了关系中的一个问题。
Now, if she is a woman with Venus in Aries, also in the 8th house, she will like his behavior.
如果这个女性呢，她的金星在8宫白羊座，那么这个女性就会喜欢这样的男性的行为。
But if she has Venus in Cancer, or Venus in Capricorn, or Venus in Libra, she's not going to like this behavior at all.
但是如果是她的金星这个女性的金星在巨蟹座、摩羯座或者天秤座，她根本就不会喜欢这样一种行为。
Hold on just a second. I have to let my granddaughter know that I am teaching class and that she cannot call me on Skype. Okay, hold on. Sorry about this.
就刚才是大家听到那个电话声，是他的孙女在给他打电话。大卫需要告诉他打电话。
My granddaughter has learned how to use Skype, but I got to let her know I'm teaching class.
他说他的孙女已经学会用那个 Skype 了，所以说他现在就得告诉他们。
When a 7-year-old learns to use Skype, you're in trouble.
那如果7岁的小孩学会用 Skype 了，你就有麻烦了。
I'll tell her I look forward to seeing you later. You this afternoon. All right. Sorry about that. It's just the internet. Okay, hopefully she gets the message and will understand that I am in the middle of teaching class. Okay, all right. So I want to make sure. Thank you, Olivia. I want to make sure that you understand what we're talking about here, how to work with these aspects, how to interpret these aspects.
所以说我希望确保大家能够理解如何来解读这些相位。
You see, I want you to begin to think of real life examples of how these aspects are going to manifest.
所以说我希望大家去想一想真实生活里面的例子，这些相位会如何的表达出来。
I mean, suppose for example, the Sun and Mars were not in Aries. Suppose the Sun and Mars were in Capricorn. That's an entirely different kind of behavior.
那假如说这个太火合相不在白羊座，而是在摩羯座，那就是完全一种不同的行为方式了。
Okay. Now, was there another question before I go on to the other points I want to make?
This is a woman.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. If this was a woman, all of the things we've just said would also be true.
那么如果这是个女性，我们刚才所说的这一切也都会是如此。
Now, let's say she's out on a date, but the guy she's with is very nice, but he's a little shy.
那假如说她也是这个女性也是去约会了，她和约会这个男性呢也是一个特别和善的一个男性，但是那个男的呢有一点点害羞。
Well, because she has the Sun and Mars and Aries in the 8th house, she wants the man to be more assertive. She wants him to be a little more aggressive.
但是呢，因为这个女性有太火合相在白羊座8宫，所以说她希望这个男性呢其实是更有进攻性一些。
You know, she wants to be swept off her feet, so to speak.
This is the idiom, right?
Yes, it's an idiom. Let me give you another one. I should have thought about that. It is an idiom, yes. She wants him to grab her and kiss her.
她希望这个男的直接把她扑倒，然后抓住她就吻她。
But he's shy or he's cautious.
但是呢，这个男的呢特别的谨慎，而且很害羞。
And so maybe she is aggressive with him.
所以也许说这个女性对这个男性来说太有点咄咄逼人了。
Maybe he's a Cancer or he's a Capricorn or he's a Libra.
也许这个男人呢是一个巨蟹座或者摩羯座或者天秤座。
And so she is too much for him.
所以说这个女性呢对这个男性来说呢就是太强烈一些了，太火辣辣了。
She is disappointed, see.
所以说这个女性呢也会很失望。
You know, even though on the surface she seems like a practical, logical young woman, a little bit sensitive, but she's feisty. She's got some feisty energy in her.
所以说，虽然说这个女性表面上看上去很讲道理，很讲逻辑啊，很温和呀，有一点点敏感啊，但实际上她内在有一些非常好斗的这样的因素。
Okay, so you see the point I'm making. You've got to create this. This is maybe a good time for you to begin in your study of astrology to create stories when you're looking at aspects.
所以说呢，现在是时候了，你们要看着相位的时候呢，你们要去自己去写一些故事，去创造一些故事。
Okay, all right. All right.
There's a question.
We have another question here.
Yes. How do we understand the aspect? Let me see it.
Okay.
How do we understand North Node aspect between North Node and Ascendant?
Aspects between the North Node and the Ascendant?
Yes. The nodes and the ascendant.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. That's a great question.
那么这样一个同学问的问题，我们怎么样看上升点和北焦点之间的相位呢？
Because guess what? I was born with one too. Here's your teacher's chart right here.
他说，那么你猜怎么着？我的星图上就有北焦点和上升点的相位。
Sure. In my case, the north node is 28 Pisces. The ascendant is 27 degrees of Sagittarius.
那么在我的案例中呢，那么就是我的北焦点是28度双鱼座，上升点是27度射手座。
So here you see the square between the nodes, the north and south node, and the ascendant descendant.
所以说你看到我这个北焦点和上升下降点的这个四分相了。
All squares show pressure, the likelihood of pressure, and challenge.
所有的四分相都给我们带来压力和挑战。
And in this case, we know that the ascendant is how you assert yourself.
那么在这个例子中，我们知道上升点是如何我们去表示我们的立场。
Well, I'll give you an example of it. But let's put it this way. Before I give you an example, let me just give you the technical side of this. So this means with anybody who has the ascendant square the nodes, that there is a conflict of some kind between, or a potential conflict between your outer behavior, your outer personality, and your overall direction in life, what you're learning.
那么我们从技术上先讲一下，任何上升点和北焦点有四分相的人，对于他们的外在的行为和他们的人生的方向上面呢，这两者之间是有挑战的，是有一些冲突的。
Well, let me give you an example of how this works.
我告诉大家这个如何运作的这样一个例子。
When I was probably about 6 years old, if I remember correctly, 6 or 7 years old, as a little boy, I was a very outspoken, a typical Sagittarius rising kid, and I would just boldly, honestly say whatever I thought.
那我在我6、7岁的时候呢，我是一个特别说话很直白的一个小孩儿，我很勇敢的说出来，我想说什么我就说什么，我就很勇敢的说出来。
At that point in my life, there was very little subtlety to my nature.
在那个时候，我的天性里面很少有那种微妙的这种元素在。
I'm a 6-year-old kid with Sag rising. Think about it.
我只不过是6岁的小孩，有着射手座上升的一个小孩而已。
I remember a scene with my parents where I'm in the car with my parents, and they are talking with someone that they want this person's daughter to be a babysitter for me for that night.
那么我记得有一天呢，我在车上听我的父母谈话，他们想让那个人的女儿呢，来照顾我，就是那天晚上来照顾我。
And this is what I, as a 6-year-old, understood to be the truth. We are here to get a babysitter.
那么作为一个6岁的小孩呢，我听到的事实是这样的，我们想找一个保姆。
But for whatever reason, my father was talking to this woman, and my mother, they were talking, and they were going on and on about things.
那么但是不知道什么原因，我的父母呢跟这个人在聊，他们一聊啊聊，一直聊一些事情。
And so I all of a sudden popped my little head up into the conversation and said, why don't we just tell her why we are here?
那么我突然呢就凑到我父母的那个谈话前面来，我就说，我一头就伸了进去，我说为什么我们不告诉他我们已经到了呢？
And my parents were embarrassed
那我的父母非常非常的尴尬，
and immediately told me to be quiet.
他们立刻叫我住口，安静点。
And I remember thinking about it. I'm around 6 years old. I remember thinking about it, and this was a lesson to me in how to be more sensitive to the situation.
那么我记得作为一个6岁的小孩，我就开始思考这到底怎么回事儿。那这对我来说也是一个教训，怎么样学会对于这个当下的状况更敏感一些。
What am I learning in part in this life? I am learning about the subtleties of communication. I have the North Node in Pisces in the 3rd house.
那么我在这辈子在学什么呢？我其实在学的是在这个谈话中的你要注意它的微妙之处。我是一个北交点在双鱼座3宫的人。
And so this was probably one of the early members in how the way I would naturally yourself was also in conflict if I didn't tune into the situation and be more sensitive to what was going on. Patient.
那么这就是我自然的对我的一个挑战。如果我不能去感知，这个谈话的它的微妙之处的话呢，可能就会有一些挑战。我的自然的行为就会带来一个挑战。
Now, you can march and see that I've got a strong Neptune anyway.
你也看到我
personal planets, the Moon and Mars, in the 12th house.
你在我的星图上也看到，实际上我本身就有一个很强的海王星，海王星合向了太阳、金星这么多行星，而且月亮和火星都在12宫。
Right. So I'm sensitive enough to where when my parents are embarrassed by my Sagittarius behavior,
所以说，当我们
let me finish. That it affected me.
所以说，当我
It
们父
affected
母
me because let me finish, Felicia. It affected me because of the sensitivity.
所以说，当我的父母被我的上升射手座的行为感觉到尴尬的时候呢，我其实是有足够的敏感性被此影响的。
Right. So
因为我本来我也是个敏感的小孩。
This is part of a life lesson.
这对我来说也是一个一辈子的教训。
I'm still learning it.
一辈子的要去学习的东西，我仍旧在学习这一点。
And so I think with anybody who has the ascendant square the nodes, there are certain lessons involved in that.
所以我想，任何人他如果上升点4分轴点的话呢，他们就有类似的这样的一些教训要去学习，一些功课要去学习。
And those lessons are part of, and you've got to think about this in terms of the lunar nodes, any important aspects to the lunar nodes become a central part of your story, central part.
那么任何和南北焦点成的相位呢，就会变成你的人生故事的一个非常非常重要的一部分，非常关键的一个部分。
Right. Now, it is also true that in my case, and this is where we can start to get into looking at the aspects in my own natal chart here. I had to learn how to use sensitivity from an early age.
那对我来说，以下这也是真实的，就是我从很小的时候我就得去学着去利用我的敏感。
As many of you may know, my mother was in a wheelchair from the time I was 14 months old. And when I came back to live with the family at the age of 4, always growing up, we had to be very sensitive to my mother's situation.
可能你们很多人都知道，我的母亲在我14个月的时候呢，她就瘫痪了，就是必须坐轮椅。当我4岁再回到家里的时候呢，从那时候开始，我们全家人呢，我们都需要对我母亲的状况呢，要非常敏感，要保持敏感。
And my mother also had epilepsy. Epilepsy.
我的母亲还有癫痫。
Right. And seizures, that's right. And what this means is that at any given time she could have a seizure or she could pass out.
那也就是说，在任何时刻，她可能都会癫痫发作，就会昏迷过去。
And obviously stressful situations could sometimes bring that on, sometimes.
有时候，如果是有些压力的这样一些情境，也会让她癫痫发作。
And so always there was this awareness of how to become more sensitive to what was going on with those around you, especially in connection with family and in connection to mom.
所以说，对于我身边的人，对于我周围的人，特别是跟家人和我母亲相关的这种情况呢，我必须一直保持敏感。
So the pressure on Libra was the pressure of to be nice. The thing that my father would always say is, "Be nice. We don't want to cause problems for your mother."
所以说，对于我这样一个天秤座的一个压力就在于，就像我父亲常常说的，要做个好孩子，我们不要给你的母亲来增加更多的压力。
And let's explore this a little bit because I'm going to get more into some of these things so you can see how this operates. Looks like we've got some questions here, Felicia. I want to deal with these questions.
Question. Okay.
Ming Xing has a question. See?
Let me see. I don't know where I clicked. I lost all the questions.
Well, I'll let you find them.
What did I do?
I don't know. We have
Oh, I see. Sorry, no conjunction, but very close. They ask whether mother's problem is a manifestation of Moon Mars conjuncting 12th house.
It's a little bit wide for that. I think it's just more the, in this case, the moon being in the 12th house and Venus being conjunct Neptune. So both of the symbols relating to mom, the moon and Venus, have a 12th house or Neptune signature.
那么梦欣问呢，是不是这是月火合相12宫造成的？这个母亲的状况是不是月火合相12宫？那老师说这个月火这个合相太宽泛了，这个不能算是合相了。那么更多的是月亮在12宫，然后金星、海王星合相，因为月亮和金星都是跟母亲相联系的这样一个象征。这个是说明母亲是有一些问题。
Now, you could make, well, let's look at it this way. When I was born, my mother, other than having epilepsy, my mother was normal. She was otherwise very healthy. She was even very athletic. She was physically quite capable. She was a gymnast when she was young. She was very strong.
那么我们这么说吧，在我出生的时候呢，我母亲除了她有癫痫之外，其他方面她是非常非常健康的，她甚至是她是很强壮，她是一个运动员。
So the only vulnerability that my mother had when I was born was the vulnerability of her epilepsy.
所以说，当我出生的时候，我母亲唯一的有的这样的脆弱性是在于她有癫痫。
It wasn't until I was 14 months old, that my mother chose to have some surgery, neurosurgery, to correct the epilepsy that left her in a wheelchair.
那么，只是在我14个月的时候呢，我母亲她选择去做一个手术来治疗她的癫痫，结果呢，这个手术却造成她终身瘫痪。
Okay. So this was a decision that was made after I was born. See?
那么这是我在出生以后他们做出的一个决定。
So the vulnerability of mother is certainly indicated in my natal chart, Venus, Neptune, Moon in the 12th.
那么我母亲的这样一个她的脆弱性呢，是在这个刚才我说的月亮在12宫金海合相这个地方表现出来。
Other things about my mother was when she was young, she was athletic, but she was also musical. She loved to sing. According to my father, she had a great voice. She could sing any of the songs that were popular back in those days.
那么除了她是一个运动员之外呢，她还很喜欢音乐，她能够唱就当时的任何一首流行歌曲，她的嗓音非常好。
And she, even when I was growing up, she loved music. However, she was unable, after her surgery went horribly wrong. She lost part of her brain as a result. She had to learn how to speak again, and could never sing again. Could never sing.
但是呢，在她做了手术以后呢，她的脑部的一些部分受到了损伤，她甚至要重新学说话，她再也没有能够唱歌。
And so, what is suggested in my birth chart as a vulnerability in terms of mom became, of course, an overwhelming situation, very 12th house, very Neptune in terms of my own development.
那么就我的星图而言呢，就是这个是母亲这个带来的，这是一个非常12宫非常海王星的这样一个问题，母亲的是被生活压垮了。
Okay. So let's look at the chart. Thank you. I appreciate that. However, it's also made me who I am. So it's like, you wish things had been different, but you also appreciate the side effects of the experience, the development of the experience.
那么我的经历是告诉我们，当然你期望这个事情是不一样的，就是事情会有所不同。但是呢，另外呢，你也感激这个副作用所给你带来的这一切，这也是他这样的事件也让我成为今天的我。
But let's take a look at the aspects here, and look at some of the close aspects.
那么让我们看一看我这张图上的相位，看看最紧密的相位吧。
All right. What are the closest aspects to the angles in the natal chart above? The closest one is, of course, the ascendant sextile Jupiter.
那么我们看看我星图上面最紧密的相位，就是木星和上升点的6分相。
You notice that they are 60 degrees apart almost exactly.
你们可以看到，他们是几乎是准的60度 这样的相位。
Right. And so you also notice that with Sagittarius being the ascendant, that Jupiter is the planet associated with Sagittarius.
你也注意到上升射手座，木星是和射手座相关的。
And so this adds more Jupiter energy to an already Jupiter personality, Sagittarius.
所以说呢，他在这样一个已经是非常有木星特质的性格中，加入了更多的木星的能量。
And it also shows that the team or group experience, Aquarius, and belonging issues, etc., very important, very much a part of the philosophy of this person.
那么他也表示出这个归属问题，还有团队的这个议题，对于这个人的信仰是很重要的。
This person wants to contribute. They want to be part of a group effort to make a contribution, especially with something they believe in.
那么这个人呢，特别希望能够通过团队的努力，对他们所信任的那些东西呢，做出一些贡献。
Okay.
信仰
But what other
可以做出贡献。
but what other aspects do we notice? We notice the ascendant square the nodes and also square Saturn. So we have
那么我们
Jupiter
还看到其他的什么样的相位呢？我们注意到上升点四分了南北焦点，上升点四分了土星。
Well, we talked about the nodes, which is very interesting, because think about this. The south node is in the 9th house, which is the house of Sagittarius.
那么当我们谈论月亮焦点的时候呢，那我们发现也非常有趣，因为南焦点在9宫，九宫又是射手座的宫位。
So here we have a lot of Sagittarius, Sagittarius moon, Sagittarius Mars, Sagittarius ascendant, and the south node in the 9th house.
那你看这张星图上有非常多的射手座的元素，月亮、火星上升都在射手座，而南焦点又在射手座的宫位9宫。
In your mind, when you see something like that, you should begin to think, this is a theme of some kind, because these things are connected in some way. They are similar in some way.
那么在你的思考里面，你应该这样想，那么这些东西应该是联系在一起的，它们有共同特征，它们是非常相似的。
This is suggestive that philosophy and religion and all manner of Sagittarian areas would be of interest to a person with this combination.
有这样一个组合的人呢，他可以表现出来的是，他对于射手座的一切的这样的主题，他都会感兴趣，比如说信仰，比如说宗教。
And yet, what is the conflict between Virgo and Sagittarius?
但是因为南焦点是在处女座，那么上升点是在射手座，那么处女座和射手座之间他们的冲突是什么呢？
Virgo wants to do everything perfectly.
处女座希望一切都能做得完美，
But Sagittarius just wants to do everything.
但是射手座呢，想什么都做，什么都想做。
Yes. When I was a student, it was typical for me, because in the United States, they give students a lot of special projects to do that you work on at home, and then you bring to school these big projects.
那么在我上学的时候呢，你知道在美国，他们给学生很多的在家做的那种项目，这样的话，你把你所做的那个项目就可以拿到学校来。
Well, I would always pick these huge projects, very big projects, that took enormous amount of time.
我总是会挑那个最庞大的项目来做，它会占用我 非常多的时间。
And so I would be working up until the last minute that the project was due to try and finish it.
所以说我直到最后要交项目的那个最后的那个期限，我还在做那个项目，就是直到那个时候。
Wanting it to be perfect.
因为我希望它能够是一个完美的项目。
And yet it was very stressful.
不过呢，这确实是非常非常的有压力的。
My father, who was a Gemini, would say to me, "Why have you taken on such a big project?"
那我的父亲他是一个双子座的人，他总是问我，你到底为什么非要去做这么大一个项目呢？
And over time, to make this, but let's just say that I used to create a lot of extra work. Saturn is the south node is square the ascendant Virgo, so I created a lot of painstaking work for myself, even as a student, as a young student.
因为土星呢，它合向我南交，又私分了我的上升下降点，所以说，即便是我是一个年轻的学星的时候呢，我也是找了一些非常让我痛苦的项目去做。
There are others think of really different aspects here, and this could confuse you, which is why I kind of like using my chart as an example here.
那么
On one hand, you have the ascendant sextile Jupiter, but it's also square Saturn.
那么这里面确实有一些复杂的因素，这会可能让大家感到迷惑。这也是为什么我找我的星图来解读的原因。一方面，你看到木星六分了上升点，但另外一方面，土星又4分了上升点。
So what does this mean?
所以说，这意味着什么呢？
It means that sometimes I could be very serious, even inhibited temporarily, or cautious temporarily, as a child growing up.
这意味着我童年的时候呢，我有时候会暂时性的，我会是有时候是 inhibited and also what?
Inhibited or cautious.
Cautious. 有时候我会谨慎，而且是好像是受压抑这种感觉。
Right. And yet this would fluctuate between being very optimistic versus being temporarily a little cautious or even negative.
那么所以说呢，我会在这两者之间摇摆，就是说大部分时候我是很乐观的，但是呢会暂时性的时候，一些时候呢暂时我会非常的悲观。
It's easy for me now, of course, to understand the role of Saturn and Jupiter in my life and in development.
那么现在回顾呢，我就更容易去理解这个我人生中的木星和土星的它们是怎么样起作用的。
Saturn is also a planet we associate with responsibility, obligation, duty.
土星也是这样一颗行星，我们把它和责任、义务联系在一起。
If you see the ascendant square Saturn in someone's chart, usually it means that they had some responsibilities or obligations or pressures of that kind to manage when they were growing up.
那么如果你看到一个人的土星4分上升点呢，你就应该去想到，那么这个人在成长的过程中，他也有一些责任，他也有一些义务，他要去承担，在他童年的时候，他就要去承担，他要去管理。
Do any of you out that are listening to me right now, do any of you have Saturn square the ascendant or conjunct the ascendant, or even
那么
opposite?
我不知道在座的有没有土星是4分上升、对分上升或合相上升的人？
Right. And Helen says she does, and some others do too. Yes. And one has a great. This often means, for all of us who have ascendant Saturn aspects, that we had a little bit more responsibility or duty or obligation that put pressure on us when we were growing up.
那么对我们所有这些土星和上升点有相位的这些人呢，就是在我们成长的过程中，我们肩膀上有更多的一些压力和责任要去承担。
I'd like to, so what is the example of this? What did Chen Yao say?
Chen Yao, wait.
See.
Someone says
Yeah,
that
something I want to. You see, Chen Yao said something.
Yao, I didn't. Because it keeps writing, I cannot see it. I can initial question. But
scroll up and it'll write out after there.
Oh, that's Helen. Helen says, but why only have responsibly grow up, not entire life?
Helen's. I'm going to answer Helen's, but.
那个 Duke， 你看一下老师说那个陈瑶瑶她有什么问题？因为这个一直在滚动，你放在 QQ 里吧，我从 QQ 里看她的问题。
So what did Chen Yao say?
I asked Duke to check. Maybe you can first answer Helen. Oh,
okay,
my QQ.
I'll answer Helen. Okay.
土星陈瑶瑶 asked whether it's the same for Saturn square or opposite Sun. It's the same as Saturn square.
Very similar. It's similar. The difference can be with its Sun Saturn, it's going to tie in more with the relationship with father or grandfather or grandparent.
这个就是说，如果是土星和太阳的相位呢，和土星和上升的相位呢，它们的表现是也很像的。那不同之处是，土星和太阳的相位呢，更多是有把和父亲或者是祖父的这个关系带入到其中。
If it's the Sun and Saturn, it often means the influence of father in some way in terms of responsibility or obligation or hard work.
土星和太阳的相位呢，意味着就是说他父亲带来的这种责任和压力是很大的，还有这种辛苦努力的这一面。
The difference between the Sun and the ascendant, though, is important to understand.
那么你了解这个太阳和土星和上升和土星的这个相位的不同，你要先了解太阳和上升点它们不同是什么。
The ascendant has a lot more to do with your body and your appearance and your outer personality.
上升点和你的身体、你的外表，还有你的外在的个性，它是跟这个相关的。
For example, the ascendant square Saturn might also show a capacity for discipline, the ability to work the body very hard.
那比如说土星和上升点的这个相位呢，它可能也表达了一种自律性，它可以很那个勤奋的去锻炼身体。
Let me give you an example of that.
我给大家一个例子。
When I was between the ages of 14 and 15, let's say the age of 15, which is what it was, at that point, and we know that Saturn has a full cycle of 29 to 30 years, don't we?
我们知道 土星有一个29年的这样一个周期。
Right? So when I'm between 14 and 15, let's just say 15, Saturn is opposite at that point where it was when I was born. Saturn is down here at 26 degrees of Pisces.
所以说，当我在14、15岁的时候，我们就说15岁吧，那么土星正好是对向我本命的土星，它是在双鱼座26度附近。
So Saturn is repeating the square to my ascendant when I'm 15 years old.
所以说，当我15岁的时候呢，土星又再次重复了在我出生的时候土星4分土星的这样一个相位。
What happened? What did I do?
那么当时发生了什么？我又做了些什么？
And this will start to answer Helen's question, by the way.
我就这样，我就开始回答 Helen 的问题。
Okay. I was a chubby boy, chubby.
我是一个胖墩墩的男孩。
And, you know, when you're 15 years old, 14 and 15 years old, you're starting, like all teenagers, to become aware of relationships.
你知道，当你14、15岁的时候呢，就像任何14、15岁的男孩一样，你就开始意识到这个两性关系了。
And there's enormous pressure about how you look, how you appear. We become very, all teenagers. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, you can go ahead.
Okay. All teenagers are more self-conscious about how they look.
那么所有的青少年呢，那时候就对于他们的长相什么样呢，他们就是更有意识了。
Well, I had always been somewhat athletic and involved in sports, though I was only okay. I played sports.
我一直是对于那个运动感兴趣。
However, at the age of 15, I decided I would lose weight.
但是呢，也就是那样的兴趣吧。但是在15岁的时候，我决定我要减肥。
I put myself on a very strict diet.
我开始严格的节食。
And I began to run every day and exercise every day.
我开始每天都跑步，每天都锻炼。
And I became very thin.
我就变得非常的瘦。
Unbelievably thin. And I went out for the school that fall at the age of 15. I went out for the school track team, the cross-country team, and made the team and became the number 3 runner in the whole state.
那么那年秋天呢，我就参加了学校那个就是跨州的长跑队，我成了我们州的就是排名第3的就是长跑运动员。
I found that when I no longer had the weight to carry, I was a very fast runner.
我发现当我没有那么多赘肉的时候，我真的跑得非常快。
And I also, for the next 2 years, I ran 2 or 3 years. I ran track, cross country, and played on the soccer team.
那么在未来的那个2、3年中呢，我就是做那种全国的那种长跑，就是穿越全国的那个长跑，而且我还踢足球。
Because I was 15 and starting to grow taller, I not only lost weight but grew taller.
因为当时我15岁，我不仅减肥了，而且我还长高了。
So when I came to school, some of the students who had known me for years did not recognize me.
所以当我回到学校的时候，那么有一些同学，他们认识我好多年了，他们竟然没认出我的样子来。
So I had some students come up to me introduce themselves to me who I'd known since I was 7 years old.
所以有些同学就竟然走到我面前来介绍他们，向我介绍他们自己。那其实这些人我7岁的时候就认识了。
Okay, so this is an example of several things. This is Saturn in Virgo expressing itself when Saturn was opposite it at the age of 15. See?
这就是在处女座的土星，在他15岁对向这个土星的时候呢，他是怎样表达自己的？
Okay, and the capacity for self-discipline.
而且我有能力自律。
My father used to tell stories about this. He said he would watch me walk through the kitchen and that I would walk past the refrigerator and not look at it.
我父亲后来还回忆我那段时期，他说当时呢，我走过那个厨房，我走过那个冰箱，我根本就是直直的向前瞪，根本不看冰箱一眼。
And he would see that that my face would become very, very determined.
他看到我的脸上的表情是非常坚定的，这是土星。
So you can see that you can think of Saturn as being something very beneficial.
所以说，你看，土星是可以给我们非常有益的一颗行星。
Jupiter is sextile the ascendant. Jupiter says, have another piece of cake. It's okay.
那木星是6分了上升点，木星在说再吃块蛋糕吧，没问题。
And Sagittarius is like, sure. Why not? We should.
那么上升射手座说，好吧，为什么不吃一块呢？
But Saturn in Virgo says, wait. Stop.
但是土星在处女座说，等一下，住口。
Right. So here you've got the difference between Saturn and Jupiter very clearly indicated.
所以说，你看看这个土星和木星，它是非常清晰的在这个案例中表达了出来。
Okay. All right. Now, we have some. Oh, someone else says yes. It's me.
Another student said my ascendant is Sagittarius too. However, my Jupiter is in Virgo, which squares my ascendant. How to explain this condition?
Well, I want you to explain it because it's your life. Can we call on you? Who is this that's saying this?
Olivia.
Olivia, let's call Olivia. Can we call Olivia?
Yes. 我们打开那个 Olivia 的麦吧。那么老师刚才说，Olivia 想让老师解释一下，她的上升也是射手座，但是她的木星在处女座4分上升点。她说这是什么意思？老师说你应该给我们解读一下这是什么意思，因为这是你的生活。
Great. Let's talk to Olivia.
打开 Olivia 的麦。
I guess Dora is busy calling her right now. Or Tong Tong.
She doesn't have microphone.
Oh, Olivia, you need to get a microphone. No excuses. All right. Well, I'll talk about it anyway. A square from Jupiter is still a square.
那么
4分
那个木星4分上升点还是一个4分相。
And it's still the difference between Virgo and Sagittarius, isn't it?
那还是说处女座和射手座的不同所在。
And certainly Virgo is much more practical than Sagittarius.
毫无疑问，处女座比射手座实际的多。
So this might mean, for example, that you have a philosophy about your good health.
那么这可能意味着你对于健康有你的哲学观念。
You know, Virgo is a sign that is often very interested in diets and nutrition and all manner of things that have to do with perfecting health.
你知道处女座是这样一个星座，它对于让我们的有更完美的健康的相关的饮食啊，还有营养呀，都很感兴趣。
And therefore, you said I think I never care about my health, you say. Okay. Let me ask you something, Olivia. Are you overweight at all, or are you normal size?
那 Olivia， 你是超重呢，还是说平常的体重？
Curious. A little fat. Okay. The Jupiter, and again, you may be being hard on yourself. I don't know what a little fat means. But number one, Sagittarius rising sometimes tends to be a little pudgy, not always. But the Jupiter square increases the likelihood of some pudginess or a little fat.
那么 Olivia 说她有点胖，那么老师说那也可能你对自己太苛刻了啊，因为毕竟没有看到你到底是什么样子。不过呢，上升射手座的人呢，他们会有一点胖嘟嘟的。那么那个木星又4分了射手座呢，那可能会让他会有一点胖。
Okay. If you have always wanted to lose weight and you have Jupiter in Virgo, there may be a solution. This is great.
那么 Olivia 说，如果是你老是想减肥，你的木星在处女座，那实际上是有一个解决方案的。
The first thing you're going to have to deal with, Olivia, is your belief system that you never succeed.
那对你来说，因为 Olivia 说她减肥总是不成功，老师说你首先需要应对的是你这样的信念体系，就是你永远没法成功的这样一个信念体系。
And Olivia, we would want to look at your whole chart to see all of the factors that go into what food is for you, what kind of nurturing that provides you.
那么我们需要 Olivia， 我们其实需要看一下整个星图，来才能知道食物对你来意味着什么，就是你所需要的这种滋养到底是什么。
Okay. For example, well, let's deal with you first, and then I'll come back to this chart. I would suggest to you, and this is just looking at the one aspect because there's probably other factors. Yeah, eating makes you feel happy. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can say that, Felicia.
那么 Olivia 说，吃东西让我感觉到幸福。
And eating makes a lot of people happy, but particularly I think this is a Sag Jupiter issue too. But eating can make a lot of people happy.
其实吃东西能让很多人都感觉到幸福。不过呢，你的问题更特殊的是这个木星4分上升点的这样一个议题。
For example, they have discovered that eating carbohydrates, like potatoes and bread and rice, makes people also happy.
那么
Puts them in a good mood.
对，别人也发现呢，吃那个碳水化合物会让人感觉到高兴。And proof that Olivia has self-noting cancer.
Okay. All right. That's another factor. See, parents don't want you to waste food. So you developed a pattern. See, you developed a Moon Jupiter pattern. The philosophy was, Jupiter and Virgo philosophy was wasting food. Don't want to waste food. See.
所以说，那你就形成了这样一个模式。木星在射手座，在处女座说什么呢？就是你形成了这样一个信念，不要浪费食物。
If we think about that, that's very interesting because we've got ascendant, Sag, square, Jupiter in Virgo.
那么如果我们去想一想，这就很有趣，因为这里的相位是处女座的木星4分射手座的上升点。
So you see, your philosophy is the philosophy from your family, which says don't waste food.
所以说，
Be
你现在在
efficient.
说你家里的这样一个哲学观念是，你信念体系是不要浪费食物。
Olivia, if you want to lose, here is.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Can you say this? Yes, I'll repeat.
Say what?
I want you. If Olivia wants to lose weight, here.
如果 Olivia 想要减肥的话呢，你需要改变这个信念体系。
Okay. You need to be nutrition.
你需要对于这个营养学，你需要去学习更多关于营养学方面的知识。
If you become very educated about nutrition, you can apply this knowledge, this wisdom to your diet.
如果你对营养学有更多的知识的话呢，你就会把营养学的智慧呢去应用于你的饮食上。
Then you are changing the pattern with Jupiter.
这时候呢，你就会去改变木星的模式。
Because you see, Jupiter is our belief system.
因为木星是我们的信念体系。
Right. And so Jupiter also has to do with our knowledge base, our wisdom about something.
木星呢，也和我们的知识体系相关，和我们的智慧相关。
Okay. All right. So I don't want to turn this into a weight loss seminar.
我们先说到这里，我不希望把这个变成一个减肥的课程。
Okay. But I want you to understand how you can use, and this is really important. Remember, every aspect that shows a potential for conflict or stress also shows a solution. You're welcome.
这是非常非常重要的。任何一个相位，它向我们展现了这些冲突，但同时这个相位也向我们展现了你的解决方案是什么。
So by using your astrologic, you can come up with a solution.
所以说，运用这个占星学这个新的逻辑，你也可以找到一个解决方案。Duke also says that maybe Virgo is also related to economy. Do not want to waste food.
Of course, and that's the old, of course, of not wanting to waste food, wanting to save money, careful about budget, and that's all part of the old philosophy.
那么处女座也和节约相关，就可以指出来了。它是一个这些就不想是浪费食物啊，想要是省钱呀等等，这都是有同样的这样一个信念体系。
So it means if you become an expert, see, Virgo, very knowledgeable Jupiter about nutrition, Virgo, you can change the pattern.
所以说，如果是你最终的对于营养学你更有知识的话呢，你这样的方式，木星是知识，那个处女座是营养学，那么你就可以改变你的模式。
Now, there are also other ways of being able to see such a thing in a chart too, and I'll just mention this briefly. Of course, when you see the moon in the 12th house and a Venus-Neptune conjunction, one of the words that should come up for you with Neptune in the 12th house, key word, is neglect. Neglect.
另外一个，你在我的星图上可以看到的，当你看到月亮在12宫，金海合相，那么对于海王星的一个关键词，你就应该立刻跳出来，那就是忽视。
If your mother is overwhelmed in her life, she is not able to be there for you.
如果你的母亲在她的生命中，她被生活压垮了，她没有办法在那儿，就是她没有办法帮助你。
Which means that the nurturing is interfered with.
The nurturing is what?
The nurturing is interfered with.
哦，这就意味着就是养育你的过程就被打断了。
And so I never tasted my mother's cooking ever. My mother could not cook. She could not cook, physically could not cook. So I never got any cooking from her.
所以说呢，我从来没有吃过我妈做的饭，因为我妈她不能做饭。
In fact, I made her breakfast from the time I was 7 years old. I made her breakfast every morning.
实际上，从我7岁开始，我每天早上都要为我妈妈做早餐。
Okay. Now, what would happen though is that adults would give me food.
那么，当时发生的情况就是说，大人们会给我吃的。
Especially food for good behavior. It's very
特别是
typical.
特别是如果我表现良好的话，他们就给我吃的。
For example, I might be given a lot of sweet food, like a big pie or a milkshake, a chocolate milkshake.
比如说，他们给我很多甜食，比如说，一个甜饼，一个苹果派，或者是那个奶茶，那个。
Or ice cream.
或者是冰激凌，奶昔或者冰激凌。
And for a kid, such food is fun to eat.
对于一个小孩来说，这些东西都挺好吃的。
And it becomes a substitute for nurturing.
这就变成了就是说也滋养我的一个替代品，食物就变成了滋养的替代品。
And could even lead to bad health habits.
这甚至会导致很糟糕的健康习惯。
Felicia, did you change something in your with your computer just now? Because I'm now hearing myself through your computer.
No, I didn't change anything.
Okay, well, someone at the office there has done something different because I can now hear my voice coming back. Sounds like an echo.
Because someone is calling me now.
Well, you need to change.
I don't know whether this
that.
is the. Okay. Do you hear the echo now?
No.
Okay, that's.
Okay. I think it's all right now. No, it's still there.
I don't know. I don't change anything.
Okay. Maybe it's fixed. We'll see. Okay. So I want to go back to these aspects. Let's explore some of the other aspects that are here.
我们再看一看其他的一些相位吧。
So all that we've talked about so far, for the most part, were these aspects to the angles. Let's look at what else is here.
那么我们刚才所谈到的都是和上升点的这个相位，我们看看还有什么样的相位。
Look at all the aspects to the midheaven.
你看看所有和中天的相位。
The midheaven is conjunct Neptune, sextile Mars, conjunct Venus, sextile Pluto, conjunct the Sun.
中天合向了海王，6分火星，合向金星，6分冥王星，合向太阳。
Okay. So all of these factors would play out in terms of career.
所有这些因素都会在我的职业中表达出来，起到有作用，有影响。
Okay. And I'm going to go through these in just a second, but let's just follow this list of priorities so we can go through. You can see how to organize your analysis of the aspects.
那么我们先看一看其他的相位，等一会儿我再来讲刚才说的这些相位的意思。这样你可以看一看如何我们组织这个相位的优先顺序。
Okay. Here, once you get past the angles, we look at the sun and moon and we list those aspects.
当你列出了所有的和四轴的相位之外呢，你就看一看和太阳和月亮成像的这些相位。
Okay, we see this. And we list them according to which are the closest.
我们看一看哪些是最紧密的相位。
Okay. Then we go to the next list.
刚才的那相位是从最
aspect.
到最不紧密的相位哈。然后我们再看一看其他的这个人行星的相位。
But here's what I want you to notice, what it says here. Notice how the order of priority gradually eliminates all of the aspects in the natal chart.
你注意到，我们这个相位的优先顺序呢，它逐渐的把这个星图上本命盘上所有的相位都那个一个个除去了。
By the time you have gone through this list, you've got all the aspects.
所以说，你按照这样一个优先顺序来列相位，当你把这个都这样一个个的这样列出来的时候呢，你就会把星图上所有的相位都列了出来。
Okay. So let's look at these aspects to the midheaven and think about what they might mean.
所以说，让我们看看这些和中天形成相位的这中天的相位，看看它意味着什么。
Okay. The conjunction to Neptune on the midheaven means what?
那么海王星合向中天意味着什么？
This is someone who is an idealist in their career.
那这个人在职业上是一个理想主义者，
Someone who may be inspired in their career.
那么这个人呢，他可能是在职业上面有非常大的这个灵感，他受到很大的激励。
Right. May even choose, for example, a Neptune career, a healing career. Could be a doctor, a chiropractor, a therapist.
那么这个人呢，可能选择一个疗愈的职业，比如说一个医生、一个指压按摩师、一个治疗师、心理治疗师。
In fact, we know that with Neptune, there are really kind of two general career categories, aren't there?
实际上，当和这个对海王星来说，有两大类的职业。
Mm-hmm. There's the healing or therapeutic career path for Neptune.
有这样一个疗愈的这样，海王星有一类是疗愈的职业，比如说这个治疗师。
And there is also, right, and then there's also the creative or inspired area of Neptune, such as in film, photography, music.
还有一类就是非常有创造力的行业，比如说电影、那个摄影、
Right.
电影、摄影、音乐等等。
Okay. Yes. I'm going to list each one of these, and then I'm going to come back and give examples. Okay.
那么我先把这个列出来，然后我再回到我们的例子中来。
Mars also aspects the midheaven very closely, is sextile the midheaven, showing taking the initiative, Mars, see, creating opportunity.
那么 火星是六分中天，也就是说，他会能够创造一些机会，为自己的职业生涯创造一些机会，会主动的积极的行动。
So this is someone who can take action, Mars, to create career opportunity.
那这个人呢，会为他的职业机会去创造，会为他的职业生涯创造机会。
Sometimes when Mars makes sometimes when Mars makes an aspect to the midheaven, it can mean that you like to kind of do your own thing when it comes to career. Sometimes, not always, sometimes this can relate to self-employment, sometimes.
那么当火星和中天有相位的时候呢，有的时候它会意味着你可能是一个自由职业者。
Now you can also think of the midheaven. Hello?
Hello?
Okay. You can also think of the midheaven as not only relating to career and public life, but also the pressures of career and public life and the pressures of expectation about public life.
那么中天呢，它不仅仅是职业生涯和你的公众生活，而且也是职业生涯和公众生活所带来的压力。
For example, I know a woman who has 3 planets in Capricorn in the 10th house.
比如说，我认识一个女性，她有3颗在10宫摩羯座的行星。
One of them is very close to the midheaven.
其中一颗行星和中天非常接近。
The sun. She is a housewife.
但这个女性呢，而且那个好像就是太阳那颗行星，但是她却是一个家庭妇女。
With 2 children.
她有2个孩子。
But she runs the family like a company.
但是他们把他们家管理的像一个公司一样。
And she is extremely responsible.
而且她特别的负责任。
She has everything planned and organized to a great extent. So she has created status with her sense of duty and obligation and responsibility. In her case, not to working for a corporation, but from turning her family into a business, basically.
他实际上他没有为一个公司工作，但是他把他们的家庭呢变成一个好像企业一样。那么他带着他的责任，还有他的这种这个负责任的这种态度呢，他辛勤的把这个家里面好像是就是说创造了为这个家庭创造了一个地位，而且
Okay.
All
right. So let's go back. I was trying to give you an exception to show you that sometimes it's not as obvious as you think.
那我给大家这样一个，有时候会有这样的例外，就是这样一个例子，就是意思是有的时候不像你们想象的那么明。
We have Venus conjunct the midheaven. What does that mean?
金星合相中天，这意味着什么？对，这个
This means that your career
把家庭当做事业来经营。
This means that your career is more likely going to involve social aspects, dealing with people, more the human relations, more of an HR factor in some way.
那么金星合相中天呢，意味着你的职业呢跟那个人际交往是相关的，有点像那个HR 这样的性质，人力资源的这样一个性质，是和人际社交相关。
It also means that you attempt to put, Venus on the midheaven might also have to do with creating things that are pleasant
那么
or
金星
look
在今天呢，
good or have some aesthetic in terms of career and public life.
金星合相中天呢，也意味着呢，你可能要创造一些美的、和谐的这样一些东西，就是在你的职业中，或者是你的社会公共生活中。
Mm-hmm. Pluto sextile is a resilient career. Resilient. Hello.
冥王星合相和中天的6分，就是说这个人非常有弹性。
The ability to back from crisis, to handle crisis.
这个人呢，他能够有能力去应对危机。
Pluto also adds a certain level of depth to the career, the ability to get into something that you are more passionate about.
就是说，要进入一个你更有激情的这样一个职业，给职业增加了深度。
It might also sometimes mean opportunities that are created through investment. Remember, Pluto relates to the 8th house, and in the case that we're looking at here of this astrologer, Pluto is in the 8th house, sextile the midheaven.
另外呢，可能是会把那个投资这一点带入他的职业生涯中，因为冥王星我们知道它是和8宫相关的，而且我的冥王星也正好在8宫。
So this is opportunity in career created through investment.
那么这个也是说，通过投资而带来的职业的机会。
The Sun conjunct the midheaven, of course, shows a strong urge to succeed. This is like Capricorn.
那么太阳合相中天意味着很渴望成功，这有点像一个摩羯座。
Okay. And the Sun on the midheaven means also wanting to be in a leadership role, in a management role, or in charge of the career.
那么太阳合相中天也意味着这个人呢想成为在职业中有成为领导的角色，管事儿的那个人。
Right. Having both the Sun and Mars aspecting the midheaven increases the likelihood of either having your own business, your own company, or being self-employed.
那么呢，就是这个火星和太阳全部合相中天，这就有可能是说你有你自己的公司，或者是你是一个自由职业者。
Okay.
增加了这个可能性。如果是有这两个相位的话，增加了这个可能性。
Of course, right, and of course the Sun on the midheaven increases the influence of father, the example of father, and the Mars aspect of the midheaven too. So this shows strong father influence in attitudes and behavior in career.
那么太阳和火星都跟中天有相位呢，也反映出来了父亲对于他的职业态度的这样的有很大的影响。
Venus also shows influence of mother in career.
那么金星呢，展示出母亲在职业中的影响。
Okay. Now while I was going through this, we had a lot of questions. So I'm going to see if we can go back through some of these questions and comments because I want to interact with you. So
what about
can you help me? Who was saying this? Is this from Wei Jun?
No. 麦娇。
You see all of the questions, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, who's asking this question?
麦娇。
Ma Zhao is asking about. Tell me the aspect again.
Oh, Pluto opposite. Pluto square midheaven.
Okay. So someone is asking this question. Okay. Who? You're not being clear with me here.
麦
So, all
椒
right. Majal is saying the MC is square Pluto. Is this right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And the MC is in what sign?
那么中天在哪个星座呢？
Please be very specific with these things, students.
Leo.
MC's in Leo. And Pluto's in Scorpio, right?
那么冥王星是在天蝎座，对吧？
Of course. Okay. Okay. What this implies is control or power issues in terms of career.
那么这个意味着在职业生涯中的这个权力斗争问题。
There can be fear or anxiety, for example, in the negative sense, this can mean feeling fear or anxiety when it comes to who is in control.
那么在负面的这种情况下，可能是会意味着你感觉到害怕，或者是感觉到焦虑，对于谁在控制。
For example, when you were growing up, was there anyone in your family who lost a job or had a crisis in their career?
比如说，在你童年，在你成长的过程中，你家里面有没有人在职业上面遇到过危机，或者是他们失业，有这样的经历？
And can we call Majal?
那么打开麦椒的麦克，
I want to call Majal. Talk to Majal. I want to get some interaction going on here. I'm a Libra. I need a little interaction here. No?
Not
No
her
microphone
chart.
either? Huh?
This is not her chart.
Oh, it's not her chart. Oh, okay. Somebody else's chart. All right. Well, this would be a control issue, and it would depend upon what kind of experiences or examples they had seen growing up about how crisis had impacted other people's career.
那么，这个呢就是说，在他们这是一个在他们成长的过程中，他看到了有什么样的例子，或者是有什么的榜样，就是危机是怎样影响了一个人的职业生涯。
Let me give you an example.
我给你一个例子。
In my own case, Pluto is sextile the midheaven rather than square.
那么，在我的这个星图中，冥王星是六合了中天，而不是四分中天。
And we know from looking at the chart that the sun is also sextile Pluto, don't we? Very closely. We know that's the closest aspect with the sun, right?
那么我们也看到，太阳和冥王星的相位是太阳的最紧密的相位，太阳和冥王星的六分相。
Okay. All right. So let me tell you a story.
所以我给大家一个案例，一个故事。
My grandfather, my father's father, worked for a large newspaper.
我的祖父为一个大的那个报纸工作。
And when the Depression came along in 1930, this big newspaper went bankrupt.
在1930年的时候，这个大的1930年大危机的时候，这个报纸破产了。
And my grandfather lost his job, and also, because of the loss of income, lost his house.
我的祖父他失去了工作，而且因为他没有了收入，所以说他也失去了他的房子。
However, my grandfather was a very resilient man.
但是我的祖父是一个特别能缩能屈的人，
And within a year, found another job with another newspaper.
那么在1年之内呢，他又在另外一份报纸找到了另外一份工作，
where he would work for over 30 years.
那么在那个工作上面，他干了30多年。
And do well financially, and was able to buy eventually another house and pay for another house.
那么他在这个经济收入是不错，最终呢，他能够再买一个房子。
So the story that I grew up on was the story of resiliency, that you could lose something, you could have a crisis that could destroy your career, but that you could also rebuild it. That there was, if you took advantage of an opportunity, you could rebuild it.
那么所以说，在我成长中，我听到的故事就是说，人是应该是可以很有韧性，即便你失去了工作，你遇到了危机，你如果抓住机会，你也可以重建你的职业。
So this is very much a Pluto midheaven kind of story.
那么这是一个冥王星中天的这样一个故事。
Okay. The square might mean that the example they were exposed to maybe had a more difficult outcome.
那么冥王星如果4分中天的话呢，那么他所遇到的这个例子呢，他的家庭的例子呢，可能是更困难一些。
Mm-hmm. And yet, the need to resolve this fear, the need to resolve this anxiety about career.
但是呢，他需要去解决这样一个焦虑，关于职业上面的焦虑。他需要解决这样一个恐惧。
Because this could also, in the negative sense, this could a belief system that something could destroy your efforts or destroy your career could certainly undermine your desire to succeed, to be successful.
那么，因为这样一个负面的这样的可能性是，你可能有这样一个信念体系，你觉得有什么样的事情会发生，它可以摧毁你的职业，那么你就这样会减弱你想要成功的这样一种渴望。
So success, in order for this person to be successful, they have to confront any fears that cause them to believe that something will happen or go wrong to undermine their success.
那么他们需要去面对的是这样一个可能信念体系，就是说可能有什么事情会发生，会毁掉他们的努力，在职业上面会有什么事情发生会毁掉他们的努力。
Okay, is that clear? Good.
这样大家都清楚了吗？
All right. Now let's take a look at some of the other questions here because there's so many. I could be sitting down here.
And another question is that, does that mean that we only need to see the aspect to MC to know that whether the career is successful or not?
There's no way you can tell from looking at any aspect or any chart as to whether a person is going to be successful. There's no way. You cannot, I guarantee you, you could give me 100 charts, I could not tell you, and neither could any astrologer, which ones were going to be successful and which ones were going to be unsuccessful. Can't do it.
那么这位同学问，那事业是否成功顺利，是不是看中天相位就够了？老师说你就是你看这个星图根本就看不出来到底谁的事业会成功，谁的事业会失败。你给我100张星图，我根本挑不出来那个其中事业成功的、事业失败的。我也可以向你确保，没有任何占星师能做到这一点。
Okay. However, what a chart can tell you, and this is the advantage of astrology, is how to be successful, how to do it.
但是星图可以告诉你如何获得成功，这就是占星学的优势所在。
If you could look at a chart, and the chart alone could tell you who was successful and who was unsuccessful, I wouldn't give a goddamn about astrology.
如果你看一下星图，你就知道谁能成功，谁成功不了。那么我才不会理会占星学呢。
I would just say, I don't give a shit because I'm either fated to be successful or I'm fated to be unsuccessful, and I don't care.
如果是这样的话呢，我肯定是说，占星学，就是说大狗屎，因为要么就是我必须成，要么我肯定成功，要么是我注定失败，那还有什么用呢？
I want to be very straight with you about this.
对此，我希望跟你非常的直截了当的这样讲。
A chart does not tell you who is going to be successful and who is going to be unsuccessful. It does not tell you this. Be very clear about this. Anyone who says that is wrong.
我希望很清晰的跟大家讲明白这一点。任何人说他们可以从星图中看出来谁的事业会成功，谁的事业会失败，他们都肯定是错误的。
However, you can use astrology to help your clients and your friends and your family to be more successful, to have more fulfillment in their life.
但是你可以运用你的星图、你家人的星图、你的客户的星图，帮助他们在职业上面更成功。
The purpose of astrology is to help you to discover the truth.
占星学的目的是帮助你发现真相。
Now, each one of these symbols tells us a lot and can help us understand a lot about the truth.
那么所有这些符号都可以帮助我们发现真相是什么。
And since we are short of time, I'm going to go through these midheaven aspects real quickly and give you examples of them from my life.
那么，因为我们现在没有时间不够了，所以说我很快的把这些和中天成像的这些行星都综合一下，我告诉你们我的人生故事是怎么样的。
So as I go through this, I want you to think about the midheaven and all the aspects to the midheaven here.
所以说，当我这样讲的时候，我希望你去想一想中天还有所有和中天形成的相位。
Right, all the aspects that are to it. Now. When I was a little boy, what did I want to be when I was a little boy when I grew up?
当我小时候，我想成为什么样的人呢？我想做什么呢？
I wanted to be, when I was a little boy, up until I was about 14, I wanted to be an artist.
那么直到14岁之前，我都想成为一个艺术家。
I wanted to paint and draw and be an artist.
我想画画，我想成为一个艺术家。
When I was a little boy and in school and in elementary school, I won awards as an artist. I got recognition as being gifted with drawing and painting and so forth.
当我在小学的时候呢，我绘画得了奖，就是说我在绘画上的才华得到了认可，这个金海河向中天。
In addition, I also thought about being a doctor. I thought about it, but it wasn't number one on my list, but I thought about it.
除此之外，我还想成为一个医生，这不是我那个职业清单上我最想做的，但是我也曾经这样想过。
And I was very, very spiritual and religious as a little boy. Very, very spiritual, religious.
而且我小时候呢，我特别的是那种特别喜欢宗教，而且特别喜欢那种精神上的东西。
I was very much involved in the church in the USA, in the church as a little boy.
我小时候呢，我总是在教场，跟那个教会的关系很密切。
And so also thought about, even though artist was number one, I thought about being a missionary.
虽然说我最想做的是一个艺术家，但是我也曾经想过做一个牧师。
When I was 9 years old, there was a woman who came to our church with some other women who had lived in China.
那么牧师这个呢，大家看到了他的老师在说的时候，他一直在那个星图上画，大家看啊，牧师是这个射手座的部分。然后当我9岁的时候呢，我遇到了在我们的教堂，我遇到了一个从中国来的传教士。
And I went to hear them speak when I was 9 years old.
就是说在中国待过的传教士，我就去那儿听他们演讲。
And they captured my imagination. See this big Neptune? They captured my imagination.
就他们的这个演讲呢，就让我浮想联翩。
With their stories about China.
他们所讲的关于中国的故事让我浮想联翩。
And so I came home and told my father that I wanted to go to China and be a missionary at the age of 9.
所以在9岁的时候呢，我回家我就对我父亲说，我想去中国做一个传教士。
But that was just a 9-year-old talking, wasn't it?
我那个只不过是9岁的男孩的这样一个聊天，这样一个谈话。
And the main thing I wanted to be was an artist.
我最想做的还是想做艺术家。
However, that changed in high school.
但是在高中的时候，这点发生了变化。
I went through the negative side of Neptune, which was disillusionment. Neptune is the dreamer, also disillusioned.
在高中的时候呢，我经历了海王星的负面的这样一个表现，就是说我的梦想破灭了，幻灭了。
Okay, right. And so I experienced disillusionment because my art teacher in high school did not like me and told me that I had no talent as an artist, and so I gave up art at that age.
那么我之所以那个幻想破灭，是因为我在高中的这个艺术老师他不喜欢我，他说我在艺术上面根本没有才华，所以我就放弃了。
I later found out that she said this to all boys who were in the art program.
后来我发现，他对于在所有那些上艺术课的这些男孩们，他都说这样的话。
Because she thought that being an artist for a boy was a bad thing.
因为他认为男孩想成为艺术家是一个很糟糕的事情。
And that she was doing them a favor to discourage them.
他那个什么，他不鼓励他们做艺术家，其实是在帮他们忙。
Yeah, she was a terrible teacher. It's true. But that was very disillusioning for me. And at that time, everything sort of collapsed for me at the age of 14. And I didn't know what I wanted to do for a while. I had no idea. I was confused. I was confused.
在14岁的时候呢，这对我来说是一个很大的幻灭。我的生活中的一切好像都坍塌了，我根本不知道我未来想成为什么样的人，我做什么，我完全的迷失了。
And then, around that same time, I found out I decided to express my creativity through writing rather than drawing and painting, through writing. Notice Venus is conjunct Mercury.
那么你看，金星合相水星，所以那个时候呢，我就决定我想去写作。
And the North Node is in the 3rd house. We know how important that is.
你看金星合相水星，而且北焦点在3宫。
Right. And so it's a long story, but I discovered that I could write creatively. And I began to write creatively and write poetry and short stories. And I got recognition as a writer. Recognition.
我就开始写诗，我就开始写小短故事。然后呢，作为一个作者呢，我也获得了认可。
Mm-hmm. And then my major in journalism, my major in college was journalism.
那么我在大学的时候，我主修的是新闻。
That was what I decided to pursue was that.
那么当时呢，我决定去主修新闻。
While I was in college, I discovered astrology at the age of 19.
在19岁的时候，当我在上大学的时候，我发现了占星学。
And astrology captured my imagination.
那占星学又吸引了我的注意力，又吸引了我的想象力。
And even though I was already a little interested in psychology, astrology became much more fascinating to me.
虽然说我对心理学也有一点感兴趣，不过占星学对我来说是更有兴趣。
Because in college I had taken some psychology courses in my degree program.
那么在大学的时候呢，我也学了一点心理学。
But when I found astrology, I became quickly fascinated.
但是当我发现占星学的时候，我马上就被占星学迷住了。
In this very unusual subject, which of course there's the Mercury-Uranus squares.
那么在这一个非常不寻常的这样一种科目中，那这就是水星和天王星的这个四分相。
Okay. And then astrology became my career.
那么占星学就成为了我的职业。
I did work some in journalism. I worked for Associated Press, and I wrote for a newspaper for a while in Virginia.
那么我确实在新闻行业工作了一段时间，我曾经为美联社工作，我也在佐治亚，弗吉尼亚州也曾经在新闻行业工作了一段时间。
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I had other little jobs while I studied astrology. I had other jobs too, just jobs.
那么我在那个学占星的时候呢，我还有其他的一些短期的工作。
Mm-hmm. While still a student, I worked for 6 months as a bartender. There's Neptune on the midheaven.
那么当我在做学生的时候呢，我还在那个酒吧工作过6个月，这也是海王星。
And I also did outdoor work, construction work and landscaping work for income while I was a student.
那我当学生的时候呢，我还做了很多的户外的工作，比如说建筑工作，还有那个景观工作。这是火星的相位。
Something physical, right? Doing something physical in your career. Okay.
那么这是一些体力活，就是你的职业中你做了一些体力活。
When I lived in Los Angeles back in the 1990s, I ended up working for a while in another Neptune profession, which is in the film.
那在1990年、90年代，我在洛杉矶的时候呢，我又开始做了另外一个职业，这就是跟以电影相关的。
I worked as a screenwriter.
我当时
and also read screenplays.
我开始写剧本。
Mm-hmm. While still making a full-time living as an astrologer, full-time.
虽然当时我仍然是一个全职的占星师。
Mm-hmm. In fact, I was able to make a good income from astrology, or at least to begin an independent income in 1978 is when
我从1978年的时候
I got my. Mm-hmm. And so during the 90s, I had a very established practice and just worked 2 jobs, did my astrology and did the screenwriting in between.
那么我在1978年的时候呢，我就可以完全作为一个全职的职业占星师来谋生了。那么到90年代的时候，当然我的职业已经非常非常稳固的建立起来了。当时我是做2份工作，一个是全职的占星师，另外一个呢我也写剧本。
I had this example growing up of a father who worked long hours.
那么我有一个榜样，就是说我的父亲，他
son,
他经常长时间的工作。
The sun is in the 10th house.
太阳在10宫。
And Mars also aspects the midheaven. And my father worked 2 jobs. One as an architect. Both of them were architect, but he would work all day for his company and then come home at night and do other drawings for other clients until 2 in the morning.
那么我父亲当时做2份工作，他白天是在公司他当然都是建筑师方面的工作，他白天是在公司做建筑师，晚上呢回来他为另外一个公司做那个就是说画图，就是画那个建筑图，会工作到凌晨2点。
So here, I know the time is out, Duke. So anyway, you can see all of these, and there's even a little bit more. But you can see all of these playing out in career. Okay?
所以说你看到就是所有的这些跟中天成相位的行星都在我的职业中反映了出来，在我一生的职业中反映了出来。
Okay. That's the point. I want you to see all of these aspects manifesting over the course of career. Okay. All right.
这就是我想指出的重点。我希望大家看到所有这些相位都在职业中表现了出来。
Okay. So we need to stop for now.
那么我们现在
And
终止了。
Right. All right. So I want you to. The main thing that I want you to do is to become creative with these aspects. Think of stories and think of how to use these aspects in ways that will make your life better.
那么我最想让大家做的是，一定要在看到这些相位的时候更有创意一些，去创作一些故事，然后看看怎么能够让你的人生更好。
Okay. All right. Great. We'll talk a lot more about this next time. And I'll be very interested in your feedback and in your questions.
那么我也很感兴趣大家对这堂课的反馈，还有是你们的问题。
All right, great. All right. Oh, we should mention, Felicia, that I'm doing a webinar tomorrow morning for the Shenzhen Children's Workshop.
Yes. 那么明天晚上我们还有就是说儿童占星学和儿童成长的一个在线讲座啊。
Okay, great. All right, thanks. Thank you, Felicia.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. That's it for now. 再见. Bye-bye.